Good evening and welcome to the CultCast, the best 30-plus minute Apple conversation you're going to hear all week long. I will be your host today, D. Griffin Jones. Irfan couldn't make it this week. We could have moved the show, but then we would have had to record on Tuesday when there wasn't any news to talk about. So we figured, give the man a break. He's doing it every day for like 600 episodes now, and this is only his second day off. I'm not alone, though. Joining me today, some say he's considering a personal time-off policy for the Cult of Mac writers. Some say he's preemptively hired the same big-money lawyers Apple uses to do their union busting, just in case of any potential retaliation. All we know is he's the managing editor of Cult of Mac. Lewis Wallace is here.
Yeah, the high-level talks are ongoing.
Mm-hmm. But there's one more thing. Finally awakening from his CultCast hibernation, it's everyone's not-so-secret favorite co-host, Cult of Mac's editor-in-chief, Leander Canny is here.
Hello.
Proof of life!
Yeah, I'm still kicking.
Well, that's good to know. We're all happy. You get Irfan out the door, but you get LK. But then again, you're still stuck with me. So, and Lewis is here too. It's a full cast. A cult cast. We have a great show for you today, despite the lack of another show favorite, Mark Gurman, from this past Sunday. He didn't publish his newsletter. That's where most of our news comes from. But we've still got a great show. We have
100% Gurman-free podcast. Excellent. Let's go.
We have Apple making a full about-face and backing California's Right to Repair Act. We have news on the iPhone 15 cable situation, both good and bad. We have audible gasps from people who have used Vision Pro. We've got a great giveaway for Apple Watch fans out there. Leander Canny wrote a book. We have some advice on how you all are filthy animals. But first, we have this word from Irfan, back from the grave, to tell you about this week's sponsor.
Hey, yo, it's me, Tim Cook. I'm just joking. It's me, Irfan. I know it's weird that I'm doing the promo spot here. And, well, hey, look, this episode is sponsored yet again by Factor. They are America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, and I don't think there's anything like it on the market. Factor Foods are the tastiest ready-to-eat meals on the market that I have had, and they specialize in what I like to call mad food. That's right, they have a variety of meals, but many of them are high-fat, high-protein meals, which is the kind of food that I like to eat. Big hunks of meat slathered in unique and tasty sauces with big old sides of veggies. These are the kinds of meals that make you feel full, but they don't wipe you out afterwards and make you feel like you don't want to get anything done. After a Factor meal, you actually get an energy boost, and you'll feel good going to work out, running errands, or just getting stuff done. They're great to just have around. You don't have to eat one every night of the week, but if you want something quick, they're fast to prepare. They literally take 2 to 3 minutes. But the surprising thing is I think a lot of times when you have like ready-to-eat meals, they're kind of dried out and gross. I don't know what Factor is doing with these recipes, but all their giant hunks of meat are juicy and succulent, just like Buster Heine. They're fresh tasting, like everything tastes unique. All their sauces are good and taste different from one another. There's a variety of different meals that you can choose, so you'll never get bored. Although I often go back to the same ones I like just because they're so good. And when Factor sent me food, my kids even liked all of it. I was fighting them to get a few bites in, and we finished the entire supply in like 2 days. I think it was supposed to last us like a week and a half or 2 weeks. If you're ready to get going with Factor, try it out. And I think that you should. Here's why. For August, you can get Factor for 50% off. Simply choose your meals. Enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered right to your door, ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. Head to factormeals.com/CultCast50 and use code CultCast50 at checkout to get 50% off, which is a massive discount and makes it so there's no reason not to try it because you're going to be saving a ton of money on Factor meals. And with food being as expensive as it is right now, it's actually a really outstanding deal. So go check it out. And thanks to Factor for supporting this episode.
Wow, it's like he was really here.
So lifelike.
Off to you, Leander. Tell us about California's Right to Repair Act.
Yeah, so Apple's done a very surprising about-face on this. After spending years and years fighting right-to-repair legislation, Apple is backing this new bill that's winding its way through the California legislature. And they sent the latest, the evidence for this is Apple sent Senator Susan Talamantes Eggman a letter endorsing the Right to Repair Act in California. The act requires manufacturers to provide consumers with the necessary tools and spare parts to carry out repairs on their personal electronics. So if we dive into some of the details, for products between $50 and $99.99, parts and tools must be available for at least 3 years. And for devices over $100, the required repair tools should be available for 7 years. And that definitely applies to most of Apple's products. So 7 years, Apple's going to supply parts. And if companies violate the law, they can be, fined various ways. Apple, in the letter, said it supports the bill because it requires third-party repair shops to reveal when they use non-genuine or used parts. And also that the manufacturers, in this case Apple, doesn't have to allow repair providers to disable a device's security features. And apparently these were a couple of the things that were holding up their support. And it's likely that Apple's self-service repair program, which they launched fairly recently, already meets the guidelines in the new bill. And it puts the onus on repair shops to use genuine repair parts. And this could possibly explain why Apple is now supporting the bill after fighting, for years against these kind of legislation. It's totally surprising. I mean, Apple was really behind the scenes, spent a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars, and hired a lot of lawyers and was fighting this stuff in different state legislatures. And so it is really surprising they've come back and they've now backed this. But of course, in recent years, they've been doing quite a lot to expand the options for repair, including this self-service repair program. So it is kind of in line, but none with what they've been doing recently, but also, but still kind of surprising.
A lot of people say that Apple's implementation of their self-service repair thing is kind of like malicious compliance because it costs just as much as going into a Apple store to get it replaced, but also they have to mail you 80 pounds worth of equipment and these nuanced, detailed technical instructions for actually carrying out the repair, and it's kind of overwhelming in a way. How do you think that affects how they view this thing?
Well, I the self-repair program, I think, is just a small part of this. It's because they were definitely, their relationship with third-party repair shops, I think, was really strained for many, many years. But I heard, this is going back a couple of years ago now. I know someone who's in the repair business, and he said that that Apple was liberalizing their policies, and they were trying to get a lot of more third-party repair providers, into the fold because they were getting overwhelmed. The Apple stores just couldn't keep up with the number of broken iPhone screens and MacBooks with dodgy keyboards and stuff like that. They couldn't keep up, so it's like a matter of necessity. They had to expand the repair options, and that's sort of seems to be quite reasonable. I mean, Apple's has always kept very tight control on everything it's to do with its business, and I think a big problem in the repair business was using counterfeit parts or used parts or dodgy parts, and that would create possibly more headaches for Apple down the line if their devices weren't getting repaired properly. So it's good. There are a lot of ways you can get your devices repaired these days. Not just by sending it to Apple, but by taking it to a local repair store or even sending it off. We pair with a company down in Arkansas. My Phone's Unlimited, and they do repairs. It's some of the cheapest you can get, but you have to send your device off for a couple of weeks. I'm sure they're delighted about this too. It's a good thing. As I said in the intro to today's newsletter, we have a hand-me-down policy for the iPhones. I tend to get a new iPhone every year, but that gets passed down, and it'll go down the family. Down to it'll be around for years. My one son is still using an old iPhone 6 that we had kicking around. Admittedly, that was a replacement for a more recent phone that he smashed. But these things get years and years and years and years of use, and the hardest thing often is to break it open to get to replace the battery. I've done that a couple of times and messed it up a couple of times too. But if you replace the battery, often these things are good for 6-10 years, even longer.
And I think enforcing 7 years of parts will really have a bigger effect on the Android manufacturers that will on Apple, because already occasionally you'll get a software update for iOS 12, I think, landed earlier this year for the iPhone 5S that released 10 years ago to this day, which is crazy.
Yeah. I think Apple does a really good job actually building the devices and supporting devices that last a long time, and I think its reputation as forcing upgrades is unfounded.
But Apple has limits in that they only build stores where you can build an incredibly profitable store, and if you live in the middle of nowhere like I do in Ohio, like going to an Apple store is an event that you have to like plan for. It's not something you can do on a whim if your MacBook has a cracked screen or if your iPhone needs a new battery.
Don't you have some local third-party repair providers, smaller shops?
Probably, and they stand to benefit from the self-service repair program too, because they can get the same sort of equipment that Apple uses. So that's another benefit.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a good thing, obviously. And Apple, I think, has been doing quite a lot to try to reduce e-waste. Of course, like when it stopped putting chargers in the iPhone boxes. I mean, how long ago? That was quite a few years ago now, right? I want to say 3 years, but it's probably even longer. That I think is people ding that. They got a lot of criticism, but I think they were quite right to recognize that the last thing someone needs is a new charger. We've already got millions of them lying around, it's apparently designing devices to be a lot easier to repair, which is something that they didn't concentrate on so much in the past. And of course, it's all part of the stated policy is to have that cradle to grave, or to make everything 100% recyclable. So a closed loop supply chain, so that there's nothing is mined. They won't use anything new as mined, and they've been making some pretty remarkable strides, I think, in using recycled materials and making these devices easier to recycle and easier to repair. And Apple's, I think, is definitely leading the industry with that kind of stuff. And like you said, Android users probably stand to benefit more from this kind of legislation than I think Apple users do.
Mm-hmm. Lewis, do you have a lot of broken devices in your family? Have you had to make a lot of trips to the Apple store for this sort of thing?
I've had to go to Apple stores here and there and get things fixed, but usually every year we just get a new iPhone on the iPhone upgrade program and
don't keep them long enough to break. That's a good strategy.
No. I was just curious. Leander says he's had a couple of battery installs go sideways. What happens when that happens? What do you do?
What do you mean?
Like if you're trying to, I would never try to replace an iPhone battery. I could barely replace a battery in my bass guitar, let alone prying open an iPhone. What happens if you crack open an iPhone and you're trying to put in a battery and you said you screwed it up? Then what?
SOL.
You just sit there with a pile of garbage? You just throw it away?
Yeah.
Really?
That definitely has happened. Yeah, I've completely messed it up and had just a pile of useless parts in my hands.
You just throw it right in the bay.
Yep. I mean, I did it with one of the original iPhones too.
Oh man.
That has an unusual design, and from what I can remember, this is a few years ago now. I think when you're getting the screen off, you have to kind of slide the back off, and instead I pried it off, so I completely kind of messed that up. In fact, I managed to kind of put it back together again, but it never really did seal properly, so that the screen was kind of hanging off the back plate a little bit, and some of the electronics were poking out. It did kind of work, and the last time I tried it was I forget now. It was like one of the sort of iPhone 9s or 10s, and that involved almost taking out almost all of the a whole bunch of interior components to get to the battery, and the battery was like one of the, for some odd reason, was in this particular design was closer to the screen. Like I think in newer ones you pop the back and it's quite easy to get to the battery, but
on the current iPhone 14 you can take off either the back plate or the front plate.
Okay, to get to
it. They both
it.
screw into the middle, but they've sort of gone back and forth over the years.
Yeah, the different designs. Yeah, but one of the ones I did was really hairy though. I mean, you had to almost completely disassemble the thing in order to put to get to the battery, and then of course I ended up with some spare parts at the end when I put it back together again.
It must have been an iPhone 9. That's why you had such a problem.
Was it the 9? Yeah.
There's no such thing.
Oh,
they went from 8 to 10.
Oh, that's right. They went to 8.
Who'd you buy it from? You bought it at Tenderloin, didn't you?
Yeah, But I definitely wouldn't do it again. I mean, you can get, but you can get. I think a lot of places make it quite cheap to replace the battery these days. So it's just not worth the headache for me any longer.
You're right about the original iPhone being really weird though, because I bought one used, I want to say like 6 years ago for $50, and in order to activate it, like you need to put a SIM card in it, and of course at the time I had like a micro SIM card, but I need a full size SIM card, so I got like a little plastic adapter thing and I put it in, but then the SIM card adapter, I left it in the phone after I was done activating, and it got stuck inside there, and I can't pull it back out again. But you can't take the phone apart because you need to take the SIM card tray out in order to take apart the rest of the phone.
Uh-oh.
So I'm stuck with this. It looks pretty. It's it's original iPhone, but it's completely non-functional. It just boots to a lock screen that says, "Hey, put in a SIM card," and then you can't do anything else.
Uh-oh. Why can't you get the SIM card out? Can't you pop it out with one of those little
because the plastic tray that I left inside there gets stuck. I can't pull the SIM card out, but I also can't take off the rest of the phone because I can't take the SIM card out.
Oh dear, it's like a little lock key there.
Mm-hmm. It's like a Gordian's iPhone.
Well, sooner or later that battery is going to swell up and it'll pop the whole thing open right for you. So no problem.
There you go. So moving right along, let's talk about more future rumors more immediately. This comes from an unconfirmed report from a tipster I don't really recognize the name of. The boring white iPhone cables that you get with every iPhone could become a thing of the past. iPhones traditionally come with white USB cables, but an unconfirmed report says they'll supposedly be matched to the color of the phone, and the quality of the cables will be improved too. This is from a tipster known as Majin Buu. I did not check on Google Translate how to pronounce that. I apologize. They posted pictures of USB-C iPhone cables in pink, blue, and black and said this is supposed to be the iPhone 15 USB-C cable. And rarely precedented in the rumor mill, a second source claims to have the iPhone 15 Pro cable, also in black from the design validation test stage of manufacturing. Both pictures show cables with a woven or braided cloth. This should make them more durable than the previous sort of plasticky, rubbery iPhone cables, which are notorious for wearing out if you use them too harsh. The cables in all of these images, of course, come with USB-C connectors on both sides because the European Union is forcing Apple to switch over to that from their proprietary Lightning connector. I feel like Apple probably would have gone there anyways, but regardless, you'll have a braided cable in the box with your iPhone. I think it was starting with the iMac Pro in 2017, Apple started including like these braided Lightning cables that they gave you for like the exclusive Pro versions of their Magic Keyboard and Magic Trackpad. And then it later came to the regular Mac Pro in 2019. And then I went one step further with the M1 iMac, where they gave you a braided color-matched power cable for all 7 colors of iMac. But, those are all higher profit margin devices. Now it seems like you'll be getting a nice braided cable that's color-matched for your iPhone, too.
Ooh, wow.
I really look forward to braided cables. I love braided cables, and every time I use one of Apple's, it feels so cheap to me. It's like, ugh. I love the braid.
Yeah, well, the newer cables, they're all kind of like they're not as rubbery or as supple as the older ones because they had to change the formulation to get rid of toxic chemicals in either the manufacturing process or its actual makeup. Do you know what I mean? Like remember the old iPod days when you got like the earphone cables were very supple and bendy, and then the more recent ones have this awful kind of rigidity to them. But so going to braided would definitely be an upgrade. But there's a catch though, right, Lewis?
Yeah. So the one that comes there, the nice braided one that comes with your iPhone, might not be as fast as you would expect. Supposedly, this is, oddly enough, comes from the exact same leaker whose name I can't pronounce, Majin Buu or whatever. Reports say a USB-C port in the iPhone 15 is faster, but the cable that ships with iPhone 15 is only going to support USB 2.0. They're saying that the port, the new port, the USB-C, good God, USB-C port might support up to 10 gigabits per second. Is that right? And but the cable might come with only 480 megabits capability. So they spend a couple extra nickels on the braiding. They take a couple extra nickels out because it's a slower. But I mean, it would be basically the same as a regular Lightning cable, right? I believe that is the exact same speed as the Lightning cable. So you won't maybe notice a difference, but
unless you're doing it,
you will say, "Daggone it! Why isn't this cable as fast as my other USB-C cables?" And we were talking a little bit about this on the show. Like, who really cares, right? What are you going to use? I mean, I'm almost exclusively use my iPhone cable for charging. I don't use it for data transfers. But then, as Griffin pointed out, people who shoot like a whole lot of really high def video and they want to dump it off into their Mac or somebody else's Mac for that matter. Let's say you're some professional situation, right? That's the way to do it. You want to use the fastest way that you can dump the data onto the other device. And having a Thunderbolt port is going to be great for those people as long as they use the cord that, a third-party cord, some cord that Apple didn't give them. You're trying to figure out what like a normal person would use it for. And, maybe like when you first buy your iPhone, you want to set it up and you want to set it up from backup. That would be a great opportunity. Once again, though, you're not going to want to use the one that comes in the box if this rumor proves true. To be honest, to me, it seems a little cheap. Like, if you're going to offer this great port on the phone, why not just give people a cable that costs, 10 cents extra and delivers the max? I mean, that's kind of what Apple's, known for doing, delivering a high-quality product.
Good question. Why, Griffin, you had a theory why they didn't include a better cable, which is...
I mean, the thing is, we didn't put it in the show notes this week because we talked about a similar story like the previous weeks, but there was another report this week that they're definitely going to be raising the prices on the Pro phones by $100 to $200 this year, whereas the base iPhones, they have to keep the price down. But, including Thunderbolt cables are actually pretty expensive. Like, Apple sells a Thunderbolt cable that does, let me back up a little bit. Thunderbolt cables and USB-C cables might look the same, but they are not all made the same. You can buy a cable that does one that you think, it's the same port. Surely it can charge my computer, right? But then you plug it in and it can't charge your computer mysteriously, even though it's completely unlabeled. Or you plug a cable in to your Mac, thinking that, this is the cable that I need to plug my Mac up to an external hard drive. And then you find out that even though you have like an expensive SSD, the transfer speeds are incredibly slow because this mysterious unlabeled cable is, only USB 2 instead of Thunderbolt. And making a full spec cable that can do everything is obscenely expensive. Apple sells a 6-foot-long Thunderbolt 4 cable for like $120 on their Apple store.
What?
That's how much it costs to
$120
make a cable that does everything. Yeah. So cheaping out and
you can hang yourself with it when you go bust.
Jeez.
Yeah, that feature comes for free.
So what makes it so expensive? Is it gold wire? Does it have chips in the connectors?
I think it has chips on either side of the connector, and it has a lot of and the chips aren't cheap. They're kind of expensive in order to be able to handle the incredible transfer speeds that Thunderbolt 4 spec requires. And also, I think you're kind of limited on length. Like 6 feet is kind of the longest you can make a full Thunderbolt 4 cable as well. And it has all of these kinds of pins and cables inside of it. I don't entirely understand why, because Thunderbolt 4 is a deep technical mess that is above my pay grade. But Apple saves a little bit of cents on each iPhone by keeping the price down by including a regular USB 2 cable with a Thunderbolt connector rather than having a full Thunderbolt cable.
Is there a way that a person can tell by looking at a cable? No way at all. So, okay, here's your next how-to. How do you tell? I guess you just plug it in and see how slow it is, huh?
There are I've seen these DIY projects where you can build a little gadget where you plug either end of a cable into, and then all these little LEDs will light up, and it'll tell you which connections it has, and then you can use that to figure out how powerful your cable is. But there's probably some commercial products of that as well, but no, they're completely indistinguishable. So many cables, especially Apple's, aren't labeled. There's really no way to figure it out.
I wonder if they might include like a Thunderbolt cable with the Pro models and a regular one with the cheap ones. That would be kind of Apple-y. Another way that they could make it, seem like it's worth the extra money, right? You get a nice color matched cable. With regular iPhone comes with a little plastic white one. I could see them doing that.
The way that the previous story was worded, where how they were like separate sources for this is the iPhone 15 cable and this is the iPhone 15 Pro cable, that makes me think you might be onto something there. And I bet you'll probably be able to tell them apart because they'll only sell the iPhone 15 Pro cables in black, and I bet the plebeian models will only come in all of the fun colors in white. Mm-hmm. So that's how you differentiate them. Apple has decided that Pro is black and everybody else is white.
They're doing that with the products anyway, so...
Yeah.
Right? That does make sense. Good theory.
iPhone is exciting, of course, but it's even more exciting. Talk about expensive, a $3,500 headset. Apple put out this press release themselves earlier this week. This is reported by Ed Hardy. Developer gives audible gasp using Vision Pro for the first time. Developers who visited Apple's special labs to test their Vision Pro apps on the upcoming headset came away impressed, according to a cheery new Apple press release. Big surprise. Apple gave developers tools to write applications for Vision OS back in June, but the hardware won't launch until 2024. The Vision OS SDK includes a simulator, but that's likely to be of kind of limited use. It's a device that you use with your eyes and your fingers, not necessarily a mouse and a keyboard. Developers need to access the product to test their applications properly. So they have some quotes from some independent developers of the community. _David Smith says, "I'd been staring at this thing in the simulator for weeks and getting a general sense of how it works, but that was in a box. The first time you see your own app running for real, that's when you get the audible gasp." Michael Simmons, the CEO of FlexiBits, which makes Fantastical and CardHop, says, "Experiencing spatial computing not only validated the designs we'd been thinking about, it helped us start thinking not just about left and right or up and down, but beyond borders at all," which is a little more vague, but similarly positive. And of course,
that was the most interesting thing I thought in the whole press release, which I got to admit, I just did a quick skim read. But Fantastical, it's a calendar app, right? Mm-hmm. And I think he was talking about seeing, your calendar. If you look at it on a desktop, you can get a day view, you can get a week view, maybe a month view. But here he is looking at his calendar, Fantastical, in Vision Pro, and from his, from that quote, it sounded like, I don't know, it sounded very, very weird. I couldn't really understand what he was talking about.
You're the CEO of an indie developer company, and you have too many calendar events to fit on a typical rectangular screen, so you need to surround yourself beyond the borders.
Right. And it was beyond borders at all. Like he wasn't thinking about, he could have an infinite calendar that would go everywhere. And then he was gasping, wasn't he, in excitement at the whole idea of that. It did make me wonder though, is it, can they make calendars exciting in 3D?
It'll spin around your head. He was gasping because he was woozy.
It's marginally more exciting than a 2D calendar. So, Leander, you haven't been on the show since the Vision Pro announcement. What are your general thoughts at this point in time?
Well, it swings, wildly between extreme skepticism and extreme excitement. I'm sure it's going to be absolutely fantastic for some experiences. But I am also kind of skeptical and a little bit depressed by the idea of wearing this thing, especially if you're in a work setting. Or a family setting. I could sort of imagine people at work if you remember. I used to work at an office where this guy was on the phone all day, and he had this headset, with one of those boom mics. Back in the old days, you had to plug it into your telephone, and he used to walk around the office with this thing on all day. And I used to it just used to drive me crazy. And But everyone else had these headsets too. Everyone in the office is sitting there with headsets, and of course these days everyone sits there with headphones on. And I was just sort of imagining how depressing it would be if you worked in an office where everyone's working Vision Pro all day, and they go for lunch, and well, what the heck? Why even take it off? Everyone else can see their eyes. They can just sit there eating lunch with your headsets on, and it just is so dystopian and a little bit depressing. And I can almost kind of imagine that happening. But I sort of, talking about it with Lewis, he sort of said that you probably put it on for certain tasks and then you take it off, and maybe you'd wear it for 2 or 3 hours a day to do certain things. That's probably the most likely scenario. But of course, some of the stuff they showed, like, movies and I think entertainment experiences are going to be, just amazing.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, a lot of people complain about, like, I haven't really worked in like a big sort of office at a big sort of company, or even like a shared working space like that. But you work in some of these places and you see pictures of them, and like, yeah, like the furniture is nice, but like you're packed in tight with all these people around you, and maybe having like being able to work in the Mount Hood environment, or on top of a lake or in the clouds, it might be more pleasant if you're the one wearing it, and then you don't have to be depressed by all the people wearing them around you.
Right. Yeah.
Grim.
It might well be. It's going to take a while, though, isn't it? I mean, obviously, these things aren't going to sell in huge numbers initially, and maybe it'll be like the iPhone, which took I guess that took a fairly, I don't know, 5 years before it kind of reached this kind of critical mass where it was definitely a mass market product.
And I think the way they're pitching the Vision Pro, like the things that they show in their marketing when they show people using the Vision Pro, is sort of indicative of how they hope it'll be used, and that they show people relaxing alone at home or getting serious work done. They don't show anybody like eating lunch with the things on, although you could have a pretty long 2-hour lunch break with the battery life. It's only 2 hours, sounds long when you talk about having lunch, but they don't show it in a lot of social settings yet, aside from the dad recording his birthday party with it on.
Yeah, thanks, Dad.
But, in his defense, it's no different than the dad in like the late 80s with the giant freaking cassette tape video
camcorder.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a little different because he's got a little weird robotic googly eyes. I still can't wait to see those. I cannot wait to see what that actually looks like in action. It sounds like nobody has really seen it. It sounds like it's still...
It sounds like nobody's seen it because it doesn't currently work right.
Yeah.
Yet. They haven't told.
It just sounds so freaky.
Yeah. I mean, as I trust Apple in a lot of this stuff, but that's maybe what I'm most skeptical on. I can't imagine that looking natural or good. But anyways, There's one more note to this story that I just wanted to touch on while I have an audience here. Earlier this month, Mark Gurman said, hearing so far that the Vision Pro developer labs to test apps on actual hardware have been underfilled with small amounts of developers. A lot of people are framing this as, like some sort of scare story and that nobody cares about the Vision Pro. But I don't know. To me, it's like, well, you wouldn't want the Genius Bar at an Apple store to be completely booked out, would you? And that's kind of like what this is equivalent to. Like this is for Apple to meet with developers to try the thing on. It's not like a press event where they want packed attendance. If it's not fully attended, that's a good thing because that means that they're adequately meeting demand. And on top of that, Apple is choosing how many people they bring into these things. So, it's not like Tim Cook's twiddling his thumbs in his office being like, oh, nobody cares about my new headset. They're choosing the audience here. I applied for a Vision Pro headset, and I'm barely even a developer. So if they accept me, then that's how you know they're scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Did they? Did they accept you?
They did not.
Not yet. Well, I'm sure that invitation's in the mail. Well, they've only got these labs in like 6 cities around the world, right? I mean, talk about not being close to an Apple store. Geez, you're not anywhere near one of these developer labs. I mean, that wouldn't stop them from sending you the software development kit? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
But I cannot wait to see this thing, and I am terrified to see this thing. I cannot believe that it's going to be a success, and I just don't. I just don't know what to expect. I mean, I can't imagine wearing one of those things near anyone else. I think I would actually be somewhat self-conscious wearing it alone in my house. Like my cat might walk by and see.
Right. That's actually a good point, isn't it? It's one of those few products that is it's so polarizing that without having seen it, everyone has can't really make a good guess about it. But then Tim Cook, didn't he say in a recent interview that he uses this every day?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't read that.
Yeah, he said that in something. I remember. And what else is he going to say? What a bummer. My big product is. Yeah, of course he says he loves it. He couldn't be more excited. I'm sure is exactly what came out of his mouth, like one of those, G.I. Joe pull toys, right? I couldn't be more excited.
I can't wait
to see what you're going to do with it. Right? Yeah, it's just it's that's his riff. But yeah, I don't know, man. The only thing I can imagine this, I mean, aside from like sitting in my house watching a movie by myself, the only other situation I can even imagine wearing one of these is on an airplane, on a, and probably even then it's a little weird, but like maybe if it's an overseas flight and everybody else is asleep, okay, I could see putting this thing on my head and watching a movie, because it would actually be that to me is the scenario where it makes sense. And if it was a $500 device, I let's say $1,000. Okay, well, AirPods Max cost, $550, right? So you don't expect it to be super cheap, but and it would be a real luxury device, right? You just cocoon yourself off in your little, you spend all your money on that so you can fly in the cheap seats and no problem. I mean, I could see that being a scenario where it makes sense, but
that's true. It's cheap when you compare it to a business class ticket.
Yeah,
and that you only get once.
Right.
Yeah, but it's not $1,000. It's $3,500.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot of money. It is a whole lot of money. But I'm sure you'll be able to divide that payment up on your Apple Card.
That's right. That's why they're doing Apple Pay later.
Okay.
Well, people said that, people were very skeptical about the Apple Watch. Remember the skepticism about that? No one wears a watch. This thing's never going to take off. It's tethered to your iPhone. There was a whole bunch of criticisms that really didn't pan out. Although they were kind of... It took, again, with the Apple Watch, I mean, obviously it's not the same device that it was when it launched, and the Apple Watch launch, they were a little bit casting around ready for its use case, and they came out with a gold one because they thought it was going to be a fashion thing, 17,000 gold.
Still reinventing WatchOS, like they still aren't. They're still, it's still a work in progress. WatchOS 10 is completely different from every other version of WatchOS.
And a lot better, I might add. It is actually a lot more logical. Finally I can sort of make sense of my watch. Before I would hit buttons at random trying to find, what was playing on my, the controls for music or whatever, because it was never really clear how the thing worked. But I think it's a lot clearer now.
Well, a lot cheaper than $3,500 is free. And speaking about the Apple Watch, Lewis has an Apple Watch giveaway this week. Tell us about it.
Yeah, wonderful segue.
King of the segues. You don't get these segues for free, folks. We pay a lot of money for these segues. So this week we're giving a titanium band that's a perfect match for your Apple Watch Ultra. It's called what a name this is. Titanium Link Band for Apple Watch Ultra. It's from Lulu Look. These things retail for $79.99. If you look at it, you have to go to our website to look at it. It's a beautiful thing. It's made from grade 2 titanium with I don't know what this means, 316L stainless steel. I see that all the time. I don't know exactly what it means, but high-end stainless steel connector. Looks rugged as can be. Looks beautiful. It's diamond-like carbon coating that protects it from corrosion and scratches. So you can, it looks actually really dressy, but it's also rugged, so you can wear it out, when you're out on the slopes or whatever, wherever everybody that has an Apple Watch Ultra I know is doing all these adventurous things, jumping from airplanes and climbing mountains and things every day. So it's ultra protective, not protective, but rugged, won't break. So but it's also lightweight and comfortable. If you want to enter this giveaway. As always, it's free. You go to cultamac.com, scroll down to the giveaway area, click the link. That'll give you a look at it too. And also, just a side note, Lulu Look. It's so hard to say that name. Lulu Look also sells a version of this band for regular Apple Watches. That we're only giving away the Ultra one, so don't get your hopes up. If you just got a normie Apple Watch like me and almost everybody else I know, this giveaway is not for you. But they do sell a version of this for regular watches. That we got a link in there if you want to check that out too. And I think the regular one's on sale for like $55 or something like that. So fairly reasonable for a very good looking watch band.
Yeah, $80 for a titanium band is a very good deal. In fact, I want one. I'm going to enter this myself.
Use a fake name.
I might do a bunch of entries.
It does look really good, doesn't it? I mean, it's one of those. It's kind of like a Spidell classic looking stretch link band, right, or whatever. I guess it's not a stretch link, but that's kind of the look, right?
Yeah.
It looks a little bit like the Juke ones that we saw in the Cultamac store. They're so awesome. It's a good price for a good looking band. So
when you sign up for the giveaway, you get access to our daily email newsletter, which itself gives you access to Leander's new book.
Oh, it's a boomerang segue.
Yeah, we finally published Unsung Apple Hero, which I've been sitting on for a little while. It's about Baz Ording. Baz was one of the leading UI designers at Apple during the sort of classic Steve Jobs era. He joined in 1996, just after Steve Jobs came back, and worked on Mac OS X, and then he was on the iPhone sort of development team. So he was responsible for a lot of the early stuff in the first iPhone, and continued to work on iOS. And so he had a long career at Apple, and he was responsible for a whole bunch of stuff that we use all the time, like Mission Control and Expose on your Mac, which zooms out all the windows so you can see all the open windows on your screen. And he was also responsible for the rubber band effect, which was when you pull down on a list on your iPhone, when it bounces back. And this was a demo he made back in 2006, I guess, maybe even 2005. For Steve Jobs, they were messing around with some multi-touch technology, and they made a demo of what it might be like to call people. So there was a scrolling list of names, which and then if you selected one, it would pretend it was making a phone call. But anyway, as you scroll down the list of names, that effect of it bouncing, that was Steve Jobs was like, when he saw that, he was like, oh my God, we can totally make a phone out of this interaction, out of these kind of interactions. So I interviewed Baz Ording and wrote an ebook about his career. It's 65 pages. It's free if you sign up for our newsletter. And I really liked it. I really think it came out well. We put a lot of work into this, and it has like illustrations throughout. So I made some little GIFs, animated GIFs, of a lot of the effects that he talks about. And we have some photographs of Baz from his days at Apple and with Steve Jobs. And he talked about, not only his work and how he came up with these interface designs, which I thought was quite fascinating themselves. But he talks a lot about working with Steve Jobs. They worked very, very closely. He'd meet with him every week or two, over a period of about 15 years or so. So he had a lot of insightful things to say about how Apple works, how Apple develops products. There was a lot of interesting history in there about, the development of Mac OS X, about the development of iOS. I'm really proud of it. I think it really came out well, and one of the benefits of when you write on something you hate it, like you hate every single word. Every word is like agony and torture, and when you've done with it, you think, oh my God, this is just like one of the worst things ever written in the history of literature. But having not seen it for a while, I went back and read it, and I had that. And I thought, well, this isn't so bad after all. This is actually quite good. I quite enjoyed it, and so I got a chance to sort of read it as a reader, and I really did actually enjoy it, and I thought it was interesting. I don't know if anyone agrees with me. Maybe it's like too much in the weeds, but I think people talking about how they work and where they get ideas from, and this sort of inspiration is inspiring. And one of the nice things about it too is that that a lot of it just seems very relatable. he would come up with insights just because he didn't really know what he was doing. He just tried everything until he stumbled on something by accident that worked pretty well, and that's how he got the rubber band effect. But luck comes to the prepared, right? Like he sort of knew what he was looking for, and he just sort of tried everything, not out of desperation, but that was the way he works. I think it's interesting anyway. I thought it was a really fascinating. To toot my own horn, a fascinating book. And like I said, it's free if you want to sign up for our newsletter, daily newsletter, which also is a good read too. That's also, I think, well worth getting. I mean, you should be signing up for it anyway, because it's actually a really good newsletter. I think it's a really good way to see everything that we do every day, and there's a lot of fun stuff in it. But if you want to get the details, head to the website, and you can find a story there about it, which will help you get started.
I'll say I started reading it. I'm about, I think, 20 pages in or so. I haven't finished it yet because I've been pretty.
You fell
busy this
asleep?
week, and I'm also not a very fast reader. I'm also not a very fast writer, as both of you know. But anyways, I found it really interesting. I especially like the pictures in there as well.
Okay.
Get visual aid from the time back in the day, and
Yeah.
to go along, it's good stuff.
Yeah, cool.
And he really
Cool.
is somebody who's like critical to the development of everything we use every day. But I had never heard of him until you brought up, you started working on this book, Leander.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, it's he's definitely one of those victims of Apple's extreme secrecy, and he'd been mentioned a couple of times. Like I think Steve's called him out in a couple of keynotes, and he's called out in Isaacson's book as a guru, as a genius. And Jobs said, it was funny because when Jobs talks about he was saying about he was at a D8 conference and he was talking about the development of the iPhone and how it all started actually as an iPad. Really, what he wanted was a slate of glass that he could read his emails on the toilet. It was how he described it. And during this D8 conference, when he's talking with Kara Swisher and Walt Mossberg, he said, "Yeah, well, I gave it to one of our guys, and he came back and he talks about this rubber banding effect, and then I got to, and this, of course he's talking about Baz Ording, and then I got to hear Baz's side of it, and he describes he was sitting in the secret lab when he gets a phone call from Steve Jobs, and Jobs personally assigned him this task to just to see what came of it, and he wasn't allowed to tell anybody else on his team. So weird. I mean, it must be strange. Like if you're his manager and ask him where his work is, and he's already been busy working on some secret project for Steve Jobs. I don't know how he's going to manage that. But anyway, it was he was really surprisingly frank as well. He wasn't guarded like a lot of people. I think a lot of ex-Apple employees are worried about revealing stuff, or worried about what they can and cannot talk about, because they all sign a big stack of papers, promising never to breathe a word as long as they live about anything they ever do. But of course, this is history. I think this is not just tech history, but the history of mankind. Humankind. These devices have had such a massive impact on human, society and human history that getting that story, I think, is important. I think it's an important contribution to make. And so anyway, I think he was a little bit aware of that too. Some of those early iPhone guys, I think, are aware that they were involved in history making products and are quite keen to get the story out, despite their fear about crossing Apple. So anyway, he was really frank and did talk a lot about his openly about how he worked and about his career and about how Apple works. So I thought it was it's kind of unique. The big disappointment for me in Jobs' biography by Walter Isaacson is that he really didn't talk about the work very much. I mean, it covered Steve Jobs' personal life and a lot of the drama about various things, but it didn't really talk about how he worked. And the only other book I know that really does a good job of that was by the ex CFO of Pixar,
Creativity Inc.
Well, actually, I haven't read that one.
No.
Sorry.
What's another good one?
No, it's by that was by Ed Catmull, isn't it? Who was the president? It's by the CFO. Hold on, I got it right here. Oh, yeah, Lawrence Levy, and this is the book to Pixar and Beyond, and it's basically about how Jobs propped up Pixar for a decade. When they didn't have any movies, and then the development of Toy Story, and then the IPO that made him a billionaire overnight. And he sort of talks about meeting with Jobs and how Jobs worked, and I thought that was full of very insightful stuff about the inner workings of Steve Jobs, and very few other books I don't think have covered that, except for maybe this, like that I thought was the strength of this ebook about Baz Ording was kind of seeing how he and the team and Jobs all work together.
And that's another good point you had there. Like, any level higher than Baz Ording is the level of like Phil Schiller, Scott Forstall, the people who will never open up in this way. So it's really insightful in that sense too.
Yeah, I would say never, because I actually did interview John Rubinstein years ago, and he was the head of hardware, and he was actually quite frank and quite revealing about a lot of stuff. So I wouldn't say never, but they definitely haven't been forthcoming. I mean, it would be fascinating to see an interview with Phil Schiller. My God, I talk a secret. So I bet he knows everything, and I would love to see an interview with him. I'd love to interview the guy, but he has been very reticent, and I can't see that happening. But yeah, it's interesting to hear from the rank and file. But this guy is definitely, Baz was like right at the heart of things for a long time. He was like, part of that sort of top 100 that Jobs had, which were the sort of key contributors to the to the enterprise. And he was very fundamental to a lot of stuff in Mac OS and iOS. And like Lewis says, this is stuff that we all use every day. It's had a massive impact.
We're giving a lot of stuff away for free this week. Newsletters, watch bands, ebooks. We can't keep this going up. We can't keep going on this way forever. So I'm going to tell you about something you can buy with your own money. It's called CultCloth. This week's episode is brought to you by the CultCloth. Erfan sent me this recording that I can drop in for this ad, but I'm editing this show, so I'm going to do it instead. And I'm going to tell you a story. Long ago, I had a friend, Marceli Maurici Lesko. He immigrated to the United States from Poland in the early 1900s. He led an incredibly simple life, the kind where you dry out and reuse paper towels. But thankfully, his approach to tissues was a little more indulgent. He was like horrified by all the Midwestern foods that he witnessed in the United States, even like decades later. Lewis, you know this. In Ohio, we put chili on practically everything, like chili dogs, which you can find everywhere, but we also do chili on mac and cheese, chili on pasta. Some places you can even get like chili on pizza, and of course you have to top it with like you have to top it with like a heaping pile of that horrible like pre-shredded cheese,
orange goo.
No, right? Yeah, like one of the best things my wife ever bought me was like a rotary cheese grater, the kind they have in restaurants. Like we never buy pre-shredded cheese anymore. We just buy like the big blocks. Like it tastes so much better because it doesn't have like that dusty texture that pre-shredded cheese has to keep it from sticking back together to itself.
Right.
And it's just like an order of magnitude easier to use than like a block metal cheese grater. So where am I going with this? I don't know. You know what? You will never go anywhere in life if you have dirty glasses and a dirty phone screen. So, you know what? Look no further than this very show. Leander, Erfan, Lewis, they're all doing well for themselves. They all have the CultCloth. I have Erfan, he doesn't even need your money. He's just doing this to share this incredible cleaning technology with the rest of the world. I'm just a peasant writer beneath these two and on this show. And you know what? I don't have a CultCloth. You do the math there. I drive a Prius, and I've been Stockholm syndromed into liking it. That's where I'm at. So you know what? Go to cultcloth.co. It's just a website. You don't have to buy anything. Websites are free. It's free to look at a website. Just go there, check it out. Maybe you'll turn your life around along the way, and use code CultCast at checkout. That probably does something. I don't know. Figure it out. I don't know.
What a great read.
I think it's going to get you something free, right? Free. Back to the free.
Yes, sure. If you say so.
A bonus is what it is. I guess it's not free because you're technically buying something else.
Oh yeah, you get a free carry cloth. That's what it is.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, cultcloth.co. It's a website. So Lewis.
Oh, here we go. Another tortured segue. What could you use a CultCloth for? Well, you could use it to clean your filthy Apple Watch band, right? Is that where you're going?
Sure.
So this is another story came out this week. Your Apple Watch band could be breeding ground for a potentially Let me start over. Your Apple Watch band could be a breeding ground for potentially dangerous pathogens, according to a new study. Scientists found that 95% of the watch bands they tested were contaminated with, quote, bacteria of public health importance. That sounds notable. This search turned up dangerous bugs like Staphylococcus on 85% of the bands. They discovered Pseudomonas SPP, I don't even know what that is, on 30% of the bands, and enteric bacteria on 60%. Scientists said the presence of the latter two types, even at relatively low numbers, is of public health significance. And here's the part that's really scary. Rubber and plastic bands are especially prone to bacteria, like those,
just like the
Apple
ones
Watch.
that 95% of everybody gets for free with the Apple Watch Sport.
Exactly. The good news is that you can, simply using, everyday disinfectants like Lysol disinfectant spray or, 70% ethanol, although I don't know who has that sitting around. This proves effective, killing things like 99.99% kill rate. So in other words, give your Apple Watch a little bit of love, clean it off. You might want to clean it off using a CultCloth. That might work out quite well. You shine it up while you also kill all these nasty things. These kinds of stories kind of crack me up, right? It's like, okay, well, there's bacteria on everything. Sorry. I mean, these sound like particularly nasty bacteria, but, it's everywhere. Don't pay too much attention to anything or you'll see gunk on it. You start, slinging around microscopes and special tests, you'll find some really nasty stuff anywhere, I'm sure. Look at your iPhone screen. That'll probably be the next. We've seen that before, right? Like I remember headlines like, "Oh, your iPhone's more filthy than your toilet." Okay, well, great news. Let me just put that up to my ear and continue talking, right? Germs are everywhere. Good luck with it, folks.
Yeah, but these ones are nasty ones, aren't they? Apparently, I don't know about the. Do you find Staphylococcus on your keyboard?
I hope not.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my keyboard's pretty nasty. And of all the things I touch, my Apple Watch band, I don't think is the nastiest thing that I have around me on a daily basis.
Well,
the thing is, your Apple Watch is strapped to your wrist, which is like in close proximity to everything that you do with your hands. So mine are probably my watch band is pretty grimy too. I should honestly switch to the sport band because it's easier to clean. I have right now the their fabric band, that like the stretchy fabric one. I don't even know how to clean it if I wanted to.
Yeah, that one's obviously really filthy. The best ones, metal bands, right? They said were the best ones to keep, especially silver and gold, to keep bacteria off of them.
What about titanium? How that is?
Probably the best of the lot.
So just looking at the Mayo Clinic, it says many people carry staph bacteria on their skin or in their nose, which is kind of disgusting, and never develop staph infections. The problem is, like, if you get cut or something, it gets inside your blood, and then it becomes nasty. So I don't know. I mean, it's another one. This story, I mean, it's not like it's fake news or something. I mean, it's totally true, but it's kind of making a mountain out of a molehill, I think. Although, not a bad idea to go ahead and wash your Apple Watch band once in a while.
Well, I wash mine in the shower. When I always take a shower with my watch, and I often give it a rinse. Then, no, I just sort of give it a quick, I just cover it in some soap and give it a quick.
I think they actually tell you not to get soap and shampoo on your watch.
Well, I just saw that as well because I wash my phone too, my iPhone when I wash my hands, and I get soap all over it, and I totally wash it off. And then I saw somewhere that soap attacks the seals. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, and I think some of the coatings on the watch, like the face and the bands and things, it can have an effect on it, right? I mean, Tim Cook a long time ago, oh yeah, I wear my Apple Watch in the shower every day because he's so excited and can't wait for everybody to see what everybody does. But I think that kind of stuff is sort of Apple, protecting themselves, right? Like, because they don't want you in there washing with some kind of especially astringent shampoo or something, and somehow it has a bad effect on your watch. I mean, I'm sure it could happen, but I also bet if you're just taking a shower and some soap gets on, I don't think it's a big deal, even though they tell you not to let that happen.
If you have the iPhone 14 Pro as well, I think when they switched to the dynamic island, like they once again had to shrink the little speaker hole at the top of the screen. So now it's just like, embedded in the small gap between the metal frame and the glass. And they actually got rid of like the little mesh covering that used to be over there. That's like been on there since the very beginning. It doesn't have a mesh covering on it. It's just like an open little hole on the top. And I see as you're both carefully inspecting the fence.
I'm looking at it now. Yeah, why? Does that make it especially vulnerable?
I mean, it's still waterproof, but it makes me wonder because like if water gets in there, like there's no equivalent to like the water mode on the Apple Watch where it shoots water out of those speakers. It makes me wonder how they're gonna like hold up to dust and water over time on those newer models with the dynamic island.
Yeah, huh?
I never even thought about that. Never even noticed it. Can't even see it right now staring at it.
I mean, then again, like on every older iPhone with a mesh covering over the speakers and the microphones, like the little wire that they use there, it inevitably builds up dust over time. Like, if you have an older iPhone and I feel like your speakers aren't very good and your microphone isn't very good anymore, it's probably just because you need to take like a little fine bristled toothbrush and like, get all the dusting crap out of there. Like that happens to every iPhone over time.
Right. Huh. I'm going to have a look at mine.
Something to do after the show.
Right.
Whoa.
Do we have time for the last story?
I think we do. So I am once again going to plug the articles and videos that go up every Saturday. This last weekend, I did 6 useful apps hiding in your Mac. So if you work on a Mac, these are 6 useful apps that can help you get your work done faster. And you don't need to download them or figure out if they're worth the cost because they're already hiding on your computer in the applications folder and in the utilities folder inside there. So this is pretty much a sort of convoluted thread line I use to talk about some of my favorite Mac apps that nobody knows about. Number 1 being Stickies. If you work in an office with readily available Post-it notes become something of an epidemic in that everybody will cover their monitors with sticky notes. Your desk will be covered in sticky notes. You'll be assigned work via sticky note that's sort of like crammed in on a tiny little like Post-it note thing. That's the worst.
PTSD. I forgot about that crap. Oh my God.
So this is an app that has digital sticky notes on your computer. You launch Stickies and you can litter them all over your virtual desktop, but then you can just like hide them or whatever, bring them back up whenever you want. You're on a phone call and somebody asks, "Hey, can you take down a phone number really quick," or something like that, or give me your account number. You just open Stickies on your Mac, hit Command N to write a new note, and then you've got like a little sort of ephemeral place where you can write down things or drop images. You can even like change the font and styling. You can use all of the most common Post-it note colors by hitting Command 1 through Command 6 on your keyboard.
This was shocking. This is one of the things I love about these things you do every week, because I find every week I find out something that I either didn't know or had forgotten. And I had no idea Sticky still existed on a Mac. I remember them from decades ago, and I was like astonished that it still was there, same as it was back in whenever 2012 or whatever. It's like, what in the world?
Same as it was back in 1994.
1994.
This is another detail.
Oh.
For some reason, in the switch between Mac OS 9 to Mac OS 10, when they completely changed the look of the entire operating system, they completely rebuilt it from the ground up. Stickies kept the same user interface. So here's a little Easter egg for you. Like, the close button is square. It doesn't have a minimize button. It has a button called window shade, where it rolls the sticky note into its title bar, and it has like a line. For some reason, there's a maximize button if you want to maximize a sticky note to cover your entire screen. And that's shaped like a triangle. I don't know why. Mac OS has never had triangular maximize buttons, but apparently that's there too.
Ready to touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, full screen.
And I can see a yellow glow on your face now too.
Yeah, I forgot that. What's it called? Window shade? The one where the up and down? Yeah, freaky.
Like window blinds. You pull the little string and then it rolls up under the top of the window. Anyways, That's only one of 6 items on this list. Number 2, digital color meter. If you ever whip up graphics and you're not a professional graphic designer, so you don't know all of the common keyboard shortcuts or anything, and I explained in the video, like, you can take a screenshot, you can import that into a photo editing app, you can use the eyedropper, you can copy the color code, or you can just open Digital Color Meter. It's a tiny little app that does exactly one thing. It tells you the exact color of whatever pixel is under your cursor. And, so if you need to figure out, hey, what's the exact color code of the Cult of Mac head banner, so I can make my copy website, Cult of Windows. You can open Digital Color Meter, hover your cursor over there, and then it'll tell you the exact shade of blue that we use. Please don't do that. It's not an endorsement.
Shh. This is one I'd never heard of at all. I was stunned that this exists.
Do you think you'll ever use it?
I don't know. I mean, I use like a browser extension for that kind of thing, right? But this is actually more useful because it works in everything.
Mm-hmm. And you can switch between like different color formats, like the the 1 through 255, like numerical codes. You can do hexadecimal codes. You can do like WebSafe codes, and you can even switch between color spaces like sRGB or P3 if you know what those are. Surprisingly
useful little thing. As with all things, it's like, how do I remember it? That's the problem. Like, because I won't need to use this for 3 months, and then I'll be, what was that thing that Griffin was talking about? And the good thing is you can always just go to Spotlight and search for, digital color meter. I mean, I don't know. If I search for color, will that do it? Yes, it does. Color. Perfect. I love it.
Or we could just republish it every 3 months. Anyways, there are 4 more items on the list. You'll have to check it out at our Cult of Mac YouTube channel, or you can go to the website to find it. 6 useful apps hiding in your Mac. So I think that's all we have for you this week. Thank you for joining us, Leander and Lewis. Thank you for listening to the end of the show. I don't have a script for this because I didn't think to plan that far ahead. Airfun is on Twitter at that's what he says. Airfun is on Twitter at ERFON, as is Lewis at Lewis Wallace, as is Leander Canny at LCanny. I'm on Mastodon at dgriffin on tech.lgbt. I'm doing the outro this time, so for once I have the privilege of reading out my Mastodon username properly. You can find me on there. Thank you so much for listening. Lewis and I will be back with Airfun next week. Who knows when Leander will be back? We should just need to encourage Airfun to go on another vacation or something. But you can get Leander every day in the Cult of Mac Today newsletter. There you go.
What's the cost on that?
It's free.
Wow. So much
Have
value.
a good week. Talk to you next week.
Is there any freaking reason for this iPhone data? I just read the story right before I got online. And
it's cheaper to make it that way. Thunderbolt cables are actually kind of expensive. So if they're making the braided cable, then that raises the cost. So sort of skimping out on how many ports they have to run through the thing makes it cheaper again.
I didn't even know that USB-C cable could be slow.
It is if you don't make it very well and cheap.
I knew that Thunderbolt was better than USB-C, but I didn't realize that it could be that slow.
Save this thrilling conversation for the show.
Is there anything else to say about it? I mean, it's just such a dull story.
Well, yeah, we're doing the same thing we do every fucking time, talking about it now. Who the fuck uses a cable with their iPhone anyway?